Right. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome. My name's Warren Duncan. I am facilitating today's training on building resiliency. Thank you for joining us today. Before I hop into the material, I have a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded for future and public use. Want to make you aware of that. You should have seen a notice when you clicked in. Then we also have this content disclaimer. And this is a way where we model a trauma-informed practice in the classroom setting. Today, it's the virtual classroom. So we're going to talk about mental health. We're going to talk about trauma today. Thank you for engaging with these topics to promote and improve our community's health and well-being. This training was put together by People Incorporated's Training Institute in partnership with Minnesota's Department of Human Services. Um, People Incorporated is a Minnesota behavioral health agency with a spectrum of behavioral health programs in mental health, in housing. The Training Institute are parts of those programs that People Incorporated has. The Training Institute provides classes related to behavioral health, live, online, and in person. I am one of the full-time instructors at the Training Institute. Share a little bit about myself just so that you can better understand where I come from, how I see things. I've worked in the nonprofit sector for over 20 years. My first role was working at a youth shelter back in 1999. Since then, I've had a number of different roles, but the majority of my career has been in housing. To be more specific, permanent supportive housing, working with individuals, families, unaccompanied youth. I usually refer to them as households. But folks who've experienced numerous barriers at maintaining stable housing. Folks that I worked with were often in and out of crisis. I had to adopt specific strategies to be able to better engage with them. Oftentimes in my work, I would hear their stories, their struggles. That was part of the job. That stuff impacted me, right? I really felt for a lot of folks that I worked with. I mean, they had to endure some really tough stuff, some tough situations. I share that with you. I wasn't unique, right? That's the nature of the work. In fact, it's not just hearing the tough stories. Sometimes I was in tough situations as well, right? In housing, um, behavioral health in general, work can be tough, takes a toll on you. Being a caregiver is tough too, right? The work that's required, the effort that we put into it, that can take a toll on us. The kids that we're working with in foster care, the challenges that they've endured, it can be hard. Sometimes it's hard to stick to a strategy when you've been in a string of tough situations. It's so easy, and I'm probably telling you things that you already know, but it's so easy to fall into a rut or to feel a little sensitive or a little fragile in a situation, especially if you've had a string of those tough situations. It sometimes it can feel like it's too much. However, there are things that we can do to boost our resilience, right? To increase our ability to be flexible. This afternoon. Here's today's course description. Caring for traumatized children and adolescents can erode a caregiver's compassion and empathy as the shared experience of trauma becomes overwhelming. Resiliency refers to the ability to withstand the stresses and strains of life and work and have a strong capacity for adaptation. Resilient caregivers have robust daily practices that keep them mentally and physically strong. This class explores the problem of chronic, unremitting stress on our overactive and distracted brains and offers a set of different skill sets for robust mental health that can be learned and practiced by anyone. So you're going to notice something today that's different with this class than the usual classes. This class is personal, right? In the other classes, we're talking about the kids, right? How to connect with the kids, knowing what's been going on, how can we kind of pivot and engage. Not doing that so much today, even though, excuse me, our topic will help us be able to do that. In this one, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about us, right? That's what makes it personal. We're going to talk about how we can be our best, right? How we can be resilient as a caregiver, be flexible, right? When we're encountering these challenges. Here's our roadmap for today. We have 4 learning objectives. Recognize warning signs of vicarious trauma. So we're going to define vicarious trauma, talk about what the impact of it might look like in someone. Many kids who've been in the foster system, they've encountered a great amount of adversity, right? You could define that as trauma. Being connected to these kids exposes us to that adversity. It impacts us. We're going to talk about more on the whys of that as we go through the class. But the goal here is for us to recognize these signs of vicarious trauma, right? What that impact might look like with us. And again, that's an example of how personal this class can be. Then we're going to examine key areas of physical health and active relaxations. We're going to review the tools, as I like to call them, right? These skills, but they're tools that we use to help mitigate or minimize the impact of vicarious trauma. Really, what we're trying to do is foster our ability to be resilient. Increase positive emotions and counter negative thinking. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how can we incorporate strategies to increase our positive emotions to counter negative thinking. I'm laughing because my grandma, for those of you that have been in other trainings, you probably recognize I talk about her a lot. She was like a second mother to me, but she used to say, Warren, that's stinking thinking, right? And that's what she referred to as negative thinking. She didn't work in behavioral health. She raised 7 children. She ran a paint store. She was always just kind of very working class, just outside the Des Moines area. But she had a word for it, right? It's stinking thinking. It just cracks me up. Anyway, I digress a bit. And then 4, we're going to address the why of being a caregiver, right? This is the last thing we're going to touch about. Why are we doing this, right? What's the reason we stepped up to be caregivers? I'm going to bet for everyone in class, it's not the glamour, right? It's not the money, right? What money? But there is a reason. That's powerful. Sound good? So check out this quote. This will help prime us for this afternoon. Life doesn't get easier or more forgiving. We get stronger and more resilient. What do you think of that? Makes sense. God made us, or we evolved to be adaptation machines, right? We learn to adapt to our situation, and that can make us stronger. It can help us be more resilient, right? To get through the moment. So let's define resiliency in the chat, or if you that we should be able to do that too. How do you define resiliency? Anybody willing to be brave, give a definition of what it means for you? What does it mean? It's one of these words we hear a lot about. The ability to keep going. Thank you. Absolutely. I love that. Keep moving forward. It reminds me of, some of you might laugh. I really love movies. I grew up in Southside Des Moines, Iowa, which was a heavily working class Italian neighborhood in the 80s and 90s when I was a kid. And Rocky was huge. But the sixth Rocky movie, Rocky Balboa, he talks about it's not about like uh it's a like life, it's about moving forward, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. But you're you're saying made me think of that. I think that is resiliency, right? How you can handle and come back from tough situations. Yeah, come back from, right? Handle that tough situation. The ability to, through encountering storms and being tossed about, maybe even capsizing, and to find that ability to come back to an even keel. Yeah, it's coming back, right? Like that's the theme. It's how we're handling it, right? How we recover from difficulties. Thank you all. I love that, right? The capacity for personal growth in the face of new challenges. Adaptation to changing circumstances. Each of us have the ability to recover from difficulties, right? For some, it's a little more difficult. I think of folks that maybe they're living in poverty, maybe they have a history of experiencing chronic trauma, right? Maybe they're socially isolated or they're experiencing mental health symptoms. It can be more difficult for some, right? However, it's possible for all of us to improve our resiliency profile by developing some skills, habits, and routines, right? This is shown in the literature around resiliency, right? The psychology literature where folks study this, right? So as we go through today, I want you to start thinking of your resiliency profile, what it looks like. Maybe do some self-reflection. Maybe there are some trouble spots or some pressure points that you might identify today. Just take a look at them. Notice them, right? Notice what's going on. Then try one or two of the skills we talk about today. Apply it to your life, right? See if it helps you practice resiliency, if it helps you in those situations. That's all. Don't try everything. From what I've experienced to folks is we're going to have a whole bunch. Don't try it all. A lot of times that can be overwhelming. I bet you might notice that I talk about things you already do, and I think that's great. But again, the goal is one, maybe two things give it a try. So I've been talking about resiliency profile. What does that mean? So we each have a resiliency profile. It's made up of traits that are like our age, um, our socioeconomic status, maybe past trauma, if we're experiencing a degree of marginalization in society. It's made up of so many things. And there's skills, right? And skills are our knowledge of biology, right? Our individual stress awareness. And our resiliency profile is a mixture of these. Now, traits, they're more hardwired, right? They're created by our typical responses to life, but they can be changed slowly over time. I've known lots of folks that have unwound habitual thought patterns as they've grown in age, worked on themselves, did the work, some through therapy, some on their own, right? But traits are a little slower to change. Skills are something that we can do, and there's more uh, 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 an immediate return on skills, right? However, we still have to use our skills, or I like using the word tools, to build on them. They're a practice, right? But they can be the path of least resilience when we're looking at enhancing our resiliency profile. And again, I want to emphasize, I don't want you to hear this wrong. This stuff takes a lot of work, right? It's not easy. It's easy to talk about, right? And there's a lot in here that I've worked in my life over years to put into my own practice. And it's still hard for me, right? But this is going to be our focus today, are adopting some of these skills. We're going to talk a lot about the knowledge of biology, but really how our stress response works, how it impacts us. So let's do a reflection activity, right? I'm gonna just have us settle into your seat if you can, if you're able to, and just take some deep breaths. If you're able to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, uh, do it. I know not all of us are able to. Many of us are battling allergies and other things right now. Go ahead and breathe through your mouth or however you breathe. I don't want you to think of, oh, I'm breathing wrong, because I don't think there's a wrong way to breathe. But just take some deep breaths. Now, shift your focus to your thoughts, right? I'm going to ask you a question, and I just want you to notice your response. What thoughts pop up into your head? Name a person you admire and think of as resilient. Who do you know of who's resilient in your life? Think of who's coming to mind, right? Who are you thinking about? What made you think of them? Again, you don't have to answer that question out loud and for me, but I do want you to answer the question for yourself. I suggest you write it down. Maybe write it down if you're, I don't know if you're a digital person or a paper and pad type of person, but if you happen to have some scratch paper in front of you, write their name down or open a notes app and write it down in your digital device. And after class, follow up. Are you able to call them? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they've passed away. Maybe you thought of someone that you don't personally know, but you admire, maybe a historical figure or someone famous. Maybe you do some research about them. Having a caregiver model resiliency, that's a protective factor in trauma. Do you remember we talked about protective factors in our trauma informed care class, right? They were these things in our life that help protect us from trauma. Well, here's a practice, right, that takes advantage of that concept. In the chat, is anybody willing to share who they thought of? I shared a little earlier about, but that's who I usually think of during this activity. So my grandmother, she was like the matriarchy of our family. My paternal grandfather passed away before I was born, and my grandmother just kind of took over with the family. So they had a small business selling paint to contractors. She took over managing that. And so she did that until she retired. She had 7 kids, lots of grandkids, and she was in everyone's life. I remember she passed away back in 2017, but having a conversation with my cousins that I hadn't seen in a couple of years about grandma, and they talked about how much she was involved in their life, just like she was involved in my life, and how much support she provided. Um, it was really cool. And that, yeah, grandmothers, yeah, grandmothers today. But as far as like, everything that she did, and it's like when I'm in a tough time, sometimes I just remember that. I remember my mom too, my stepdad, right? That they've handled tough situations and helped model that for me. But when I'm tough, that's what I think about. That's helpful. Folks share when I've done this reflection, all sorts of people in their lives. And so, whoever it is, identify them, look them up, give them a call. And again, that's going to help you foster your ability to be resilient. So, let's talk about the biology, right? The stress biology. Talk about the different kinds of stress. The first stress is the good stress. We call it eustress, right? That's what psychologists refer to it. It's the type of stress we feel when we're excited, right? Our pulse quickens, right? Our hormones change, right? But there's no threat, there's no fear, right? We feel this type of stress like maybe it's riding a roller coaster, like in this picture, or maybe we're celebrating a touchdown, watching football. It's our team, right? If you're into that sort of thing, or we're going on a first date, right? That's something to feel excited about, nervous about, right? There's many triggers for the good stress, right? It keeps us feeling alive, feeling excited about life, right? It's something, if you follow this red line here, that it pops up and then it drops off, right? It spikes and it goes down. Another type of stress is acute stress, right? Look at this cute little dog, right? It comes from a quick surprise and we need to respond to it, right? Acute stress triggers our body's stress response, right? And it's not the happy, exciting stress response, right? Like we feel in eustress. It's different. It's, is there a threat? But it does run similar. It spikes and then it goes down. Threat, handle the threat, threat's gone, back to normal. right? And when this is happening, our body is releasing hormones and chemicals in order to deal with the threat. But the important to notice is it goes back down, right? We go back to our pre-stress state afterwards, where we're happy and healthy, right? Now, there's this third type of stress I'm going to show you, and this is the one to worry about. Look at that poor figure right now, right? It's not even a real person, but I'm feeling for that, right? This is chronic unremitting stress. Look at this line here. Doesn't go down. Goes up, goes up, goes up, and stays up there. This type of stress happens when we're repeatedly facing stressors. And they start to take a toll on us. They can feel inescapable. It could be a stressful job or an unhappy home life can bring chronic stress. This is what we think of as the serious stress because our bodies aren't designed for chronic stress, right? They're designed for more of that acute stress. Danger, okay, we're out of the danger. Back to normal. Here, always danger. It means that the stress response is always firing, right? So we're experiencing it over an extended period of time. And that's what starts to take a toll on you. Now, back up a little bit and talk about our brains and how they're designed, but they're designed to constantly scan the environment, right? Even when we're sleeping, they're still kind of scanning the environment. They're programmed to look for threats and rewards, right? We want to move away from threats. We want to move closer to rewards. Sometimes threats are in our mind because we need to be prepared to deal with them. And again, when we're dealing with them, our stress response, often called our fight or flight response, will kick in. And again, this response, it's chemical, it's biological, right? It's very strong. And it's initiated in a third of a second. It's threat. Okay, stress response fires. Notice how many more threats we see compared to rewards. We're primed to notice and remember a threat. And think about what these threats can look like, right? It's not necessarily we run into a bear in the woods, right? I mean, it's kind of as we evolved, right? Early in our civilization, like that's the threat, but that's not what threats are anymore. And a lot of us have smartphones that connect us to the world, and don't get me wrong, that's a great thing. But what are we looking at? The news, social media, videos of cats playing the piano? And what are we remembering? What's sticking with us? It's not the cat playing the piano. I think it's so adorable, though. But when we see this over and over and over again, think about how we respond to that. And think about the subtle messages. Like, I think of social media, subtle messages that other people are smarter than you, right? Other people are better looking than you. Not us, right? But for everyone else outside of the class, right, we're all good looking people. But again, implicit messages, just looking at the social media account, right? The Instagram, the TikTok, the Facebook. Other people are more successful than you. Other people are happier than you. Other people are having more fun. Other people are more virtuous. And again, it's just seeing the story. Not many people are posting, oh my goodness, this is a terrible thing that I had to endure. I mean, that happens, but the vast majority of what we see are people's vacations, the good times that they're having, right? Nah, I'm struggling right now to be able to pay the bills. Or I got to put this car repair on the credit card because we didn't have it in the budget. And like, am I doing something wrong? And we go back to stinking thinking, and it's very easy to see where stinking thinking can come from. We have this negativity bias, right? It's I'll read this here. Even when of equal intent have a greater effect on one's psychological state and processes than neutral or positive things. Did you catch that? It's the negative things that stick out to us. And it's like a 5-to-1 ratio, meaning that we have to have 5 positive things to counter one negative thing. Think about that for a sec. You get up in the morning, right? Let's say you have a negative experience, like maybe um, you overslept with the alarm and you're getting coffee and you spill that coffee on yourself, right? And you're going to be late. Well, you got to have 5 positive experiences just to counter that being late situation, just to get back into balance. So it's really easy to see how you can start off the day on the wrong foot. And again, going back to our stress response, it fires just on perception. We perceive that something might be a threat, it's going to react. And when it does, again, in less than a third of a second, it's going to send a message to our body. So there's going to be a release of hormones, of chemicals into our body, which is really useful being chased by a tiger, right? Not useful for the other types of stress. And so when this is going long term, that impacts our autonomic nervous system. Autonomic is a fancy word for kind of like automatic. We have these 2 branches in our cells that are nicely balanced. It's when these are balanced, the term used is homeostasis. It's where the body wants to be balanced between our parasympathetic nervous system and our sympathetic nervous system. Our stress response is part of the sympathetic nervous system. And so let's go back to that chronic unremitting stress, right? When this system is repeatedly activated again and again, because we're ruminating on the negative, it can put us off balance. We can't activate the other system, the parasympathetic nervous system, right? Which brings us back into balance by releasing dopamine, activating the reward centers in our brain, right? Our oxytocin network. So think of it as the sympathetic nervous system is kind of like our body's accelerator. And the parasympathetic nervous system is our decelerator. Well, if our accelerator is the thing that's going on, that's going to ramp us up and up and up, right? And if we can't access our parasympathetic nervous system, we're not able to slow down enough. That's what puts us out of balance. Does that make sense? Any thoughts or anything I can clarify? When we look at it like this, you see this red line here, right? That's our stress response. And in our other classes, we talked about our window of tolerance, our ability to maintain our calm in tough situations. Well, if our stress response is spiking too high or kind of falling too low, we can become dysregulated, right? In our trauma class, we talk about more about what this dysregulation looks like, but we talk about this model, this window of tolerance. And it was a model created by Dan Siegel. And when we're falling outside, what does that look like? Right? Here in the gray, we're doing fine. We fall outside, we begin reacting. In a hyperarousal state, when we're in the midst of dysregulation, we might snap at a loved one for something small. In a challenging situation, maybe we start to really escalate, raising our voice or feeling the need to take control, overly manage the situation, right? A strategy that's probably not really helpful. And we know it afterwards, but in the moment, we're kind of reacting. We could also fall below our window to this hypo arousal. There, maybe we start to shut down a bit. Maybe it looks like we just give up, stop trying. I've heard parents describe it as kind of like being in a swamp. It's hard to make decisions or to figure out what to do in a challenging situation. Believe it or not, a few weeks ago I was talking with a colleague, and just they were dealing with a lot of stuff with their family, but they were having a hard time just making phone calls, right, to straighten out some kind of a medication mix up. There was something going on between the their child psychiatrist, the primary doctor, and the pharmacy, like a med mix up. And it was really hard for them to try to straighten all that stuff out in the moment. Like they really had a hard time picking up the phone, logging into my chart. So they were just venting about it with me. They were in a hypo arousal state. So we need to be aware of where we are to be within our window. And like I said, it's easy to talk about here. It's harder in the moment. And we're going to get into our warning signs, and that's going to help us kind of recognize when we're riding close to this edge of dysregulation. And whether you're brand new to this or you've been doing this for a while, there are going to be times where you're about here, right? Because this and it can compound. And to know, you know what? I don't know if I can handle a whole lot more right now. And so when we feel that, okay, now I need to adopt some tools so that I can get back down or I can widen this window so I can maintain my composure so that I can respond rather than react. Any thoughts, reactions, things I can clarify? It's kind of lining up with your world, or maybe you want to push back a little bit. Like I said, we want to try to get to here. We're still gonna, like, there's still gonna be challenges, right? We're not gonna make challenges go away. That's not how it works. But again, it's knowing our stress response, knowing what that looks like. In an earlier class, I know that I've said it, but I'm going to say it again. In the mental health world, we have this phrase that we use, and some of you have probably heard it. Definitely if you heard me say it, but name it to tame it, right? When we're feeling big feelings, the part of our brain that's responsible for the stress response, the amygdala, right? The downstairs area of the brain. That's what's feeling that intense emotion, that intense feeling. When we're aware of it, we label how we feel. That's a different part of the brain, right? That's the upstairs part of the brain, the smart thinking part of the brain, right? That's including the prefrontal cortex. Now that's dispersing that energy. And that's why it can feel less intense just by labeling the feeling. So, us talking about it, well, that's giving us the tools to be able to label these big feelings. Any thoughts, any questions before we define vicarious trauma? So, what is this vicarious trauma? We were talking a bit about it earlier, but let's officially define it, right? The emotional duress that results from when an individual sees or hears about the firsthand trauma of another. So, just hearing about someone's trauma can produce emotional duress. Why? That's not happening to us, it's happening to them. Let's go back to our stress response system. Remember, it's not very sophisticated. It just sees the world as threat, no threat. So, hearing about the trauma, the adversity, it's going to hear threat. So, it's going to respond. And again, over time, hearing those stories starts compounding. Makes sense? So, let's do another reflection activity, right? What are your current sources of stress? Write it down on the scratch paper, or if you're typing in your notes. But what are your sources of stress? Chances are we're all experiencing some kind of stress right now. Where is it? Is it in work? Is it at home? Is it kind of navigating the system for our child? And you just reflect on where that is. And you don't have to answer it out loud, or for me, but just where it is for you. And now there's a second piece, right? When we're talking about where our stress is, what symptoms are we getting? Are we getting physical symptoms like headaches or eye strain or neck strain? Or maybe we have cognitive symptoms, right? Just our ability to think clearly, to focus. Sometimes when we're under a large amount of stress, it's hard to concentrate. Like my friend who was having trouble just logging into my chart to figure out all that insurance stuff. Or maybe we keep ruminating on the stress, thinking about it over and over and over again. Normal response to folks that are under stress. Are your symptoms emotional? You might be more prone to have an angry outburst, to snap at someone that maybe doesn't deserve to be snapped at. Or are your symptoms behavioral, right? You're having trouble sitting still. And another colleague who was in a tough situation. And I remember that they just paced. That was their, that was a symptom that they would have, pacing. They were just walking around our office, just like in a circle. I was like, what's that about? They shared, I'm under this stress, and that's part of how I deal with it. I just pace, and they were telling me they'd walk around. Their home had like a little island in the kitchen, and they said, I just been walking around that all night. I was like, oh, buddy, sorry to hear that. Right? So pay attention to your stress symptoms. Where are you feeling them? We want to know, right, what our symptoms are. So let's talk a little bit more about our secondary traumatic stress. That's another word for vicarious trauma, right? And again, like I'm saying, it builds from witnessing others suffering, their distress. In my work, and I can imagine as a foster parent, it's the same thing, but we're exposed to the traumatic stories of others, right? Through their experiences. We're also exposed to it. If you think about it, like maybe in some of your work in our communities, right? We hear about, just the tough things that people have to go through. In the human service world, we talk about this as compassion fatigue, right? It's kind of the impact of this secondary traumatic stress, this vicarious trauma. That's what we call it. It's hard for us to be able to empathize with others, but this concept is in other sectors as well. I've heard in housing agencies, CAP agencies, where they're agencies that don't necessarily work directly with people, but more around the funds. They've called it mission fatigue. One of my good friends, he manages a plant, a manufacturing plant where they build equipment, and he's talked about this same kind of a mission fatigue with his employees. And most of his employees, they're all like engineers, and same concept. But there's a continuum of symptoms that people will experience when they're exposed to trauma. That's kind of the clinical way to say you've been exposed to trauma, and here it's a scary trauma. And it goes down to having this intrusion, this avoidance, this arousal, and it'll lead to compassion fatigue or burnout. Compassion fatigue, I would say, is like kind of a symptom of burnout. It's a component of burnout, but that burnout is that more general thing, like I was saying. And as we're kind of going through like intrusion, what does that mean? It means that maybe you're having thoughts that just burst into your head, right? They're unwelcome, but they're forcing themselves into your thoughts. Maybe it's a strong emotions, right? Avoidance. Well, maybe you're trying to stay away from the difficult stuff, right? Maybe you're avoiding places that might remind you of the difficult stuff or objects that might remind you kind of that experience, right? Avoiding any situation that bears resemblance to a traumatic event. And then arousal, that's when somebody's body just kind of kicks into high alert, right? As a result of thinking about the trauma. Even though the danger's not present, right? Their body acts like it is, right? And just creating some lasting stress long after the traumatic event. I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but I just want to give you an idea of what this looks like. And the key point here is that I want you to recognize what might be happening as you experience or are exposed to vicarious trauma, and that it is a normal reaction. This is kind of part of the work that you're doing as a caregiver, working in the foster care system. You hear the tough situations the kids experience, and it's going to impact you. The challenges of life, too, on top of that, it's going to impact you. It impacts everybody. And we need to pay attention to that. We need to know, again, what our symptoms might be. I have a tool, a PDF file that I'm going to share with you. And we call it our secondary traumatic stress scale. And it works really well in the services field. And I think it might be useful for you as well. So I want to recommend that after today's class, download this to your computer, but after today's class, see where you fall on this. And then maybe use it as a something periodically that you pull out, maybe a couple of times a year, and just use it as a temperature check to see where am I. I've had folks do this and they've ranged from, oh my goodness, I thought I'd score a lot higher than I did, to, yeah, I wasn't really aware there was something going on, but as I did this assessment, there's a lot that's going on. And I'm starting to see it was like almost a excuse me, like a blind spot for what was going on. And again, this is going to allow us to be aware of what might be going on. And you check out some of the questions. You see here that I've altered the questions order from the assessment, but they're going to line up with symptoms of intrusion, symptoms of avoidance, symptoms of arousal. And then it's just the basic, the instructions are on the sheet, but it's just a basic scale, like a 1 to 5 scale. I think it's a Likert scale is the fancy term for it, but to be able to score where you are. Try it out. I'll have my information at the end, but if you find some benefit or some significant impact for you, follow up with us. Let us know. Right, Brett and I would love to hear. Anything I can clarify around symptoms? Any thoughts that you want to share? All right, so we got 35 minutes. Let's talk about some of the skills, right? Um, when you build resiliency, it's like you're building a wall or a house, right? It's kind of a one brick at a time. When you need a wall to protect you from the elements, it's not something that you can necessarily produce out of thin air, but it's something that it's day by day you're putting together. So it's there when you need it. That metaphor really works here, right? You can start today. And like I said before, I imagine There are things that you're already doing to help foster resilience. And so be aware of that. But then let's start with having a plan to really cultivate that, to build on what you're doing. Resilient folks, they have their daily practices. So find what are you doing daily to foster this skill. And maybe you need to work something in to a daily practice. We get resilient by doing difficult things and getting through them. While we're doing those difficult things, we're using the tools, right? And so we can do them over and over again. That's why a lot of times I'll refer to this as a practice. One of the things grandma used to say growing up would be like, she'd be like, Mijo, that's what she called me. Once you think you know something, you quit learning. And it's like, same thing here. It's a practice that we're always learning. I like sports. I'm going to use another metaphor. If you look carefully here, right, at these soccer teams, you're going to notice that the red team here has the ball, but the blue team, they're set up really well. So, Mr. Red Guy here, to retain possession, he needs to reset himself in the team so he doesn't lose possession of the ball, give it up to the blue team. And for newer players, they might not necessarily recognize that in the situation. They might try to make a they might try to just take it up on their own midfield and blunder their way up there, give up possession, or try to make too long of a pass only for it to be intercepted. So this is kind of like how our brain works in a stressful encounter, right? During our day. We got to keep possession. What I mean, stay in control of our day, right? Stay within our window of tolerance. And so when the game starts to get tough, like here, the coach is on the sidelines shouting what they need to do so they don't forget. We're our own coach up here too, right? And so when we're in a difficult situation, it might be helpful to ask our question, hey, what would our coach say? And if we have a plan, the coach would say, hey, remember what we practiced. Remember our plan. And it's the same thing for you. All right, what's in the plan? When a curveball gets thrown my way, this is what I do. Hey, I noticed some symptoms, some things have been building up. Okay, I need to use a tool. What is the captain saying? Right? Similar to the coach. What have we practiced? Hey, we prepared for this. We're training for this. We're sticking to the plan. We got this. Right? Little bits of affirmation. And I appreciate those of you that aren't into sports going along with this metaphor. But when we're looking at the biochemistry of the tools and the skills, we're looking for little things to stimulate our parasympathetic nervous system. Remember, it's all going back to balance. I got some good news for you. Like, we're made to be in balance, right? Reaction to an abnormal situation by encountering some of these challenges, but our body's gonna want to get back to here. And when we're here, again, that's where our brain's releasing dopamine, oxytocin, the reward centers of our brains are getting activated. We're feeling connection, empathy, compassion. It's boosting our immune system. So good things are happening here. But we need to kick it in. And then over time, okay, now it's going to start to kick in on it on its own. For me, one of the big tricks that I use to help kick this in right away is deep breathing. When I'm in intense situations, I can feel when my breath starts getting short and shallow, which is a symptom of being in my sympathetic nervous system. I will intentionally make my breaths long and deep, trying to breathe out, breathe in through my nose, full breath, breathe out fully through my mouth, trying to breathe out a little longer than I'm breathing in. That helps stimulate my parasympathetic nervous system. Another thing, and you guys may laugh at this, but I get really nervous with public speaking. When I in my previous role, I had to do a lot of public speaking too. Not enough that it stopped me from doing it when I would do grassroots organizing in previous roles or um, speaking to a group of folks at the legislature. Like I would get really scared. So what I started doing is that I would chew gum or I would get these sour candies, atomic warheads. I love them. But I would purposely do that before I had to do the engagement so that that would stimulate my saliva, that would spark my parasympathetic nervous system. So there's little things that we can do. Being aware of our vagus nerve, that's a main component of our parasympathetic nervous system. Check it out here. How it connects to our facial nerves and how it goes through our whole body. Smiling helps us connect with our vagus nerve. Last summer, I was coaching. My oldest daughter plays girls softball, and she was pitching, and she'd get nervous too. And part of what we practiced to help get us loose, ready for pitching, was to smile. So I tell her, Charlie, remember to smile. And again, that was intentional for her to stimulate her parasympathetic nervous system. This stuff works. Last month, I got into it with my brother over baseball. It's so stupid, right? But we were getting into it. Um, he's a big Royals fan. The Royals took off at the end of the season. I love the Twins. They tanked. And I was feeling it. Caught myself, smiled. I was able to be like, oh, this is not big of a deal, right? My brother's just being kind of rude about it, but it's no big deal. This stuff works. Talk about physical robustness, right? Again, we're going to go over different skills. Don't look to do everything, but see what works for you. This first one, holding our body posture upright, right? There's reports that self-report that people, when they hold their good body posture, they feel powerful, confident, and positive. This is something that's been researched to show that it does work. How you carry yourself is more than just how you're seen, but it's how you feel. And so folks are reporting, I feel more engaged, stronger. And it's a little thing like this behavioral body posture. And by the way, when I talk about the research and, in our communities in Western civilization, this stuff is known. I read a book a couple years ago on, it was called The Book of the Five Rings. It was written by a gentleman named Miyamoto Musashi. He was Japanese. He was a samurai. He wrote the book in the early 1600s. And the whole book is metaphor for just practicing awareness and presence, just mindfulness stuff. But he talks about body posture and it lines right up with the current literature. Remember, this is the early 1600s. But what he talked about is you want to stand up straight, you want your knees slightly bent, you want your shoulders back, right? Your head just subtly down and like that's your power position. And that's the same body posture that they talk about in the current research. I was doing this a version of this training earlier for housing workers out in Montana, and I remember one of them said, "Hey, that's exactly what they teach us in our choir practice in order to be able to project our voice and to be able to stand during the concert." So chances are you've probably heard similar things. Any thoughts around this tool? And feel free to, like, if it lines up with your thinking, right on, I'd love to hear it. But even if there's subtle pushback or you see things differently, I'd love to hear that too. This next skill is around what we're eating. I like to eat. You guys can probably pick up on that. I love cooking. And I love, like, as far as lots of different types of food. When we're stressed, when we've been, our sympathetic nervous system is working overdrive, we're like that little figure in front of the laptop, we'll start craving the carbs. Why? Quick energy. A net posture improves our breathing as well. Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely does. Posture's huge, right? My grandma can't be the only one always saying sit up straight. But going back to as far as what are we eating? We talk about avoiding the trans fats, eliminating the high fructose corn syrup, right? Try to reduce or eliminate sugar and refined flours. I want to acknowledge that, gosh, it's so easy to say this stuff, and it's hard sometimes, right? Let's say we're living in a food desert. There's not a lot of options for food. Um, Trying to string together your food budget, that's been stretched with all of us as stuff got more expensive over the past couple of years. I don't know how your kids eat, but my kids like to eat. They're growing too. So it can be hard to say, oh, I'm going to eliminate all the processed stuff. I'm going to eliminate this because sometimes it's not feasible. So let's look at, well, what can we add into it, right? If not everything is fresh or we're able to buy it fresh, well, where can we? Are there little things that we can do to, or little practices we can adapt to just minimize the highly processed stuff? And again, recognizing when we're stressed, this is where we're going to go. We're going to want that donut, right? We're going to want that delicious pan pizza. And it's okay, but it's recognizing that in these high times that craving might be a little bit more powerful. And so can we swap that out? For me, I try to do at least one healthy meal. It's like my little harm reduction approach to eat more healthy, as far as, like, okay, salad, balance, like what it's supposed to look like, and then that's my one meal, whether it's lunch or dinner. And I'm going to try to be consistent with that. What can you do? Drinking water, right? Stimulating our saliva. I talked a little bit about that earlier. That's part of how we can trigger our parasympathetic nervous system. Our stress response dehydrates us. And so, even though we're not running from that tiger in the forest, we're still getting dehydrated. So, what can we do? Drink more water. Fresh frozen vegetables are much better than canned vegetables. And yeah, keep that coming. Great, great bit of advice. And it's easier to, for me, the challenge goes, I'm just going to jump into my family situation, is things are busy at night. There's some activities that we're trying to get to. I'm getting back from work. And so, like, the fresh frozen vegetables, the flash frozen ones, well, we can do it. They cook a little quicker too. Um, Drinking water is huge. Little things that you can have. just I have like a little bottle of water. It's pink because I take the hand-me-downs from my family. But having that around help you drink more water. Hot drinks are a great grounding technique, help you be more present if you're feeling a little stressed. Something hot like tea, like coffee, that can help keep you hot, just even hot water, keep you present. Little tricks. And of course, gum or the little sour candies are useful if you're in a situation that's really stressful, like my public speaking. Let's move on to active relaxation and keep too. Like I said, you all are doing stuff also. Put it in the chat. If I don't get a chance to read it, that's okay. Everybody's reading it. So active relaxation. Check this one out. This one's really interesting. So cold water in the face. There's this thing, it's called our mammalian diving reflex. Yeah, I think that's mammalian diving reflex is what it's called. But we're hardwired if we're feeling like our stress response is activated. If we splash cold water in our face, that's going to help bring us down. The mammalian reflex, from what I've read, it's hardwired into us because as we were running from danger, or if we found ourselves falling into a river, we would need to be able to orient ourselves, have our wits so that we can swim and escape danger, right? Because if we're flailing or we're just in that panic zone in the water, we're going to drown. And so this is something that helps us calm down. Now it's kind of like a little body hack for you if you're feeling really charged, really strong emotions. I have a personal story that y'all might appreciate too around this. A few years ago, we were with the family. We were at a family cabin out in the north woods of Wisconsin. And one of my family members started having heart issues where their heart was beating really fast. And my brother-in-law, he's a physician, he knew about this. He had us get a big bowl of ice water. So we filled it with water. It was super cold. He then had them dunk their face in the ice water, and the heart rate started coming down. And since then, I've heard like if you can like bend past your hips by putting your face in there, that helps trigger that response more. But it's not just a beating heart, but if you're feeling really activated, cold shower or even in your sink, cold water might help you ground more and be present. Something to try. If you're having trouble sleeping because you have those intrusive thoughts, you're just thinking about that situation. Maybe it's something with your child where you're feeling like you're spinning your wheels and you're ruminating on it. Give this a try. See if that helps reset you. Grounding are techniques that we can do when we're feeling a strong emotional response to help stay present. They're little things that we can do. Focusing on the room. Maybe you could do it right now. Look around your room. How many colors can you see? How many objects are on your desk right now? Count the number of chairs. Notice if there's a curtains, right? How many windows? Little bits like that are just little grounding techniques that help you orient to the present, right? Big one that I do is my deep breathing. I put my focus on my breath coming in and coming out helps me stay present. Naming facts, humming your favorite tune, imagining your favorite meal, what it smells like can help you if you're experiencing a strong, challenging emotion. Come back. Visualizing a happy place, that's been um, a good form of grounding, of regulating. Thich Nhat Hanh was a Buddhist monk. He passed away a couple years ago. He is a great resource if you ever, anything that he's written, or if you go to YouTube, any talks that he gives are really enlightening. And it's coming from, his lens of being a Buddhist monk, but around the topic of mindfulness, which is just paying friendly attention to what's going on within you and around you, um, is very useful. But having a happy place that you think about that you can mentally go to. For me, I do this. My happy place that I go to is that family's cabin. It's right on a lake. I picture myself being there, and it helps me kind of stay centered if I'm dealing with some challenging stuff. I just take 5 minutes and I focus on my breathing and I put my focus to this imaginary place. And when I come back, things don't see, I'm not as hot, if that makes sense. Body scans are a useful tool. They're a good strategy for someone that might be dealing with tension. John Kabat-Zinn was one of the first Westerners to start coining mindfulness. He's a great resource too in Western cultures. Um, he has a number of guided meditations, but in a body scan, you're just putting your focus on the different parts of your body, usually starting from one end to the other. So, like the bottom of your feet up to the top of your head. I've been in some body scans where they have you tense up and then relax so that you can kind of notice. And for me, when I do that, oh, I've been really tense this whole time. I didn't know about it. And so it's useful for paying attention to that. Remember, our stress response system sometimes will tense up, our muscles will tense up, right? Our blood pressure goes up. Why? It makes us stronger. But again, over the long term, headaches, where does that come from? Well, my shoulders have been crunched up all week. Of course, you're going to get a headache. A little bit of caution here too, though, if someone who's had a traumatic experience in the past, this can be uh, triggering for some. So I want to throw that out there. It can be re-traumatizing, especially if the trauma had to do with some kind of abuse or sexual abuse. But if that's not the experience, there might be some value here. Again, another breathing technique. This is square breathing. Here, the technique is breathing 4 seconds in, holding for 4 seconds, breathing for 4 seconds out, holding for 4 seconds, doing a cycle. This is known by many different names. I first learned about this in the 90s. My older brother was in the Marines, he was in the military. And I remember when he was talking about some tough situations that he was in during his service, that they taught the same technique to them so that they could stay centered in those tough situations. But they called it tactical breathing. So I've also heard it called take five, known by lots of different things, but it's again, it's breathing is something we're always doing, but we can be also intentional about how we do it. But it's a nice trick to activate or stimulate the parasympathetic, or yeah, the parasympathetic nervous system. Give it a try. Here's one a lot of us probably know. Music activates our good feelings, right? Activates the vagus nerve. It can calm us. And this is something like music in every culture around the world, right? This is something that connects with us. I find that fascinating. I love music. Again, maybe something that many of us already do, but maybe this is something you include to a plan. You know what? I'm not feeling it. I'm going to listen to this music. I want to put in, whatever music you like. No judgment. All right, as we move in to our final piece, we're going to talk about increasing our positive emotions using affirmations, right? Intentionally telling ourselves positive things. Find your affirmation, right? Be like Stuart Smalley in that old Saturday Night Live skit. I think that was our former Minnesota State Senator Al Franken played that character. But what did he say? I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. And that's funny, but it also works. And so here are some affirmations that you can use for myself. I am good enough. I got this. I can do tough things. And again, that's going to counter that inner critic that we have that sometimes can be cruel, can be overly critical. I've heard it said a lot, and in my own experience would echo this, but sometimes we're our worst critics on ourselves. We're hardest on ourselves. Our thoughts say things to ourselves that we would never say to another person. Affirmations can help counter that. Humor is another tool. When things are stressful, sometimes dark humor can start to come up. I believe it's referred to as gallows humor. Pay attention to that and just notice where that's at. But if it's within the realm of appropriateness, that's okay. That's yourself helping you to adjust. Helping someone out, being kind, right? When you do this, any altruistic action will produce dopamine within yourself. But sometimes you can just say, you know what? I need a win in my column. So doing something small and simple can help that. Maybe it's helping a family member clean up the kitchen, doing it together, right? Something small, but that might put a little win in your column. That might have you feel better helping somebody else. Having a positive list for the day, right? Maybe it's a gratitude list would work in here, like the things that went well. Again, we're trying to highlight those rewards, the positive over the negative. The negatives stick in here. I have a gratitude list that I keep in my phone that I look at here. Oh, that's actually my spending for the for the month. But here's like my gratitude list. On it, I have the things that I'm grateful for. I have my family, my friends, my house. Writing this down, having a list. Again, that's going to cultivate your resilience to say, you know what, this didn't work out, but I have so much more. I mean, you notice when we're doing this, there's really a shift in our perception that we're trying to foster. I'm going to share something important with you for those that have stuck around to the very end. So there's this saying I've heard where If you put a tablespoon of salt in a small, like, shot glass of water, you're going to taste the salt. But if you take a tablespoon of salt and you put it in a big gallon jug, you're not going to taste it as much. And that same principle, and it's all your perception here, that same principle applies here. That's what we're trying to do, is widen what we're experiencing. That's going to help us manage our thinking, manage that stinking thinking, reduce those negative thought patterns, and it's going to foster a growth mindset. Now, you might have a plan, and there might be days you're able to do it and days that you're not able to do it. And you're going to think this doesn't work. But this isn't an all or nothing type of thing. That, I feel, is faulty logic, right? What we're trying to do is to cultivate this learning mindset. I know I talk about this in some other classes, but I think it's really important to highlight here, right? That we're doing this, we're learning as we go. Sometimes we might swing and miss, and that's okay, right? Because what can we learn? What can we do differently next time? We're managing a challenging behavior or a tough situation. What can I learn from next time? And with that, we are at the end. Here's a list of resources that we use to put together today's class.